Gentlemen, let us embark upon an exploration of The Chronic by Dr. Dre, a composition that has indeed marked a significant turn in the annals of musical evolution.
A curious subject, indeed. Upon my examination, the contrapuntal methodology in utilizing samples reminisces of the fugue, though applied in a manner most foreign to my own practices. This confluence of past and present articulations intrigues my intellect.
The dynamism and clarity in the production, it strikes a chord within me, reminiscent of the tempestuous movements in my symphonies. There's a boldness in embracing technology, something I would venture into, had the fates granted me the era.
But the playful genius within these samples, the patchwork of sounds assembled with such vivacity and spirit, reminds me of my own diversions and variations. Innovation, indeed, knows no boundaries, not in year nor style.
I find the social commentary woven in the lyricism comparable to the deeply emotional narratives in opera. Through melodrama, we project society's mirror, and Dr. Dre has done so with an earnestness that speaks across cultures. While the melancholic depths explored through lyricism mirror my nocturnes in introspective sorrow, they speak of a world rife with tribulations far beyond my own. Yet through music, we find a shared language of the soul.
The marriage of tradition and innovation seems to be a resonant theme across Dr. Dre's work and your own illustrious careers. It strikes me that the foundation of music rests not on the era in which it was created, but on the universal truths it seeks to convey.
True, yet the method of delivery, the sampling and looping of bygone motifs, could it not dilute the purity of composition?
Purity? Ha! Music is emotion, evolution. Stagnation is the true enemy of art. If Beethoven had synthesizers, divine thunderstorms would I create. Embrace change, Johann, as I have faced my deafness, head on.
Ludwig, always the stormy petrel. Johann, imagine the past as not merely a well to draw from, but as a playground for our present creativity, much like variations on a theme. Is not all music a conversation across time?
Yet, we mustn't overlook the poignant narrative this album constructs. Its ability to invoke reflection upon societal issues, much like my operas, endeavors to stir the audience's conscience. Music should provoke, should it not? Provocation, yes, but laced with an element of the personal, the intimate. It is in these reflections where we find the universal. Dr. Dre's exploration of struggle and aspiration mirrors every artist's pursuit of truth through art.
The pursuit of truth, indeed. A most fitting point to pivot our discussion towards the specifics of sampling, the cornerstone of the Chronic's soundscape. Let us begin with the role of sampling in shaping the soundscapes of the Chronic. Dr. Dre's approach reveals a complex layering reminiscent of counterpoint techniques. Johann, your thoughts on this matter?
Indeed, Igor. Dre's manipulation of pre-existing musical phrases into a new compositional context mirrors the counterpoint technique. In Nuthin But a G-Thang, the use of "I want to do something freaky to you" is not mere replication. It's an intricate dialogue between the past and present, akin to a fugue where each voice retains its integrity while contributing to the whole. This is not borrowing, it is rebirth.
While Johann extols the virtues of complexity, let us not forget the genius in playful simplicity. Sampling, to me, is akin to the variations one might compose on a theme, as I did with vous dirais-je, maman. By taking a familiar line and dressing it in new garbs, Dre invites the listener into familiar yet uncharted territories. The joy in the Chronic comes not from complexity, but from the unexpected journey of well-known sounds.
Folly. The joy you find in simplicity lacks the depth of true artistry found in complex interplay.
But dear Johann, does not true genius lie in making the complex accessible, in finding the whimsy in the intricate?
Gentlemen, let's focus on the composition. Ludwig, your perspective on this?
Both Johann and Wolfgang highlight important aspects, yet they dance around the core. Dr. Dre, like a true maestro, commands his orchestra of samples with a boldness that beckons the future while nodding to the past. This is not merely rehashing old tunes, but constructing a new lexicon of sound. The meticulous choice and placement of each sample in the Chronic echo my own obsession with thematic development. However, where I would labor over the development of a motif, Dre instead manipulates entire soundscapes, thrusting them into the narrative of the streets.
But where is the soul in this manipulation of pastiche? True artistry lies in the melancholy of creation, in birthing notes that bleed with one's own suffering and joy. Can a sampled chorus truly carry the weight of human emotion?
Do not mistake your own penchant for introspection as the sole domain of authenticity, Frédéric. There is a raw emotion in Dre's work, a reflection of strife and celebration. One need not always look inward to find truth.
Indeed, in the genius of Bach, or Dre if you will, is the ability to transcend the simple medium and reach for something divine, even if it is through the earthly means of recycled melodies.
And yet we must not lose sight of the playfulness in creation. The light-hearted touch often carries the heaviest messages.
It appears our discourse reveals the multifaceted nature of sampling in the chronic. As in all great compositions, the interplay of complexity and simplicity, depth and playfulness, tradition and innovation, forms the very essence of its enduring appeal. Let us proceed, mindful of the layers we continue to uncover in this masterpiece. Let us dive into the lyricism of the chronic. Its narrative strength, social commentary, and cultural reflections are vast. Giuseppe, your operatic themes often mirror such depths. Share your insights.
Ah, indeed. The chronic strikes the heart like Verdi's most earnest operas. Lil Ghetto Boy, with its storytelling, brings to mind the plight and struggle akin to my La Traviata, where the societal undercurrents play as much a role as the characters themselves. Dre, like a true dramatist, uses lyricism to pull forth the raw emotion and harsh realities of life. While Giuseppe finds operatic drama, I see the introspection and melancholy akin to my nocturnes. In Let Me Ride, there's a lyrical exploration of freedom amid strife, a solitary journey through one's inner turmoil and the society's pressures, echoing the tender sorrow and longing found in my work. There's a poetic elegance in the rawness.
But must we not consider the musical structure that houses these lyrics? The chronic's lyricism is but one part in a greater contrapuntal texture, where thematic elements intersect with rhythmic and harmonic complexities. It crafts a narrative much as a fugue weaves its subject through various voices.
You speak of structure, Johann, yet there is a boldness in Dre's approach that cannot be ignored. The directness of this lyricism, its unfiltered confrontation with social ills, echoes the revolutionary spirit of my own compositions. There is no room for subtlety in the face of oppression and injustice. This album, through its lyrics, challenges its audience, demanding a response.
A charming notion. Yet let us not forget the playful mastery and innovation Dr. Dre employs. Brevity, wit, and candor mark his lyricism, much like the conversational interplay in my operas. There's a certain joy in the audacity of his words, a celebration amid the critique. It resonates, striking a chord that vibrates through the very soul of the listener.
The discussion on lyricism thus reveals a spectrum, from the narrative and reflective to the structural and boldly confrontational. Clearly, the chronic provides a rich tapestry for exploration, mirroring the multifaceted nature of musical composition and thematic development across eras.
Tapestry, Igor? Surely we can acknowledge that Dre's narrative is as striking as any libretto I've penned, without resorting to such worn metaphors.
A fair critique, Giuseppe. Let us then say, the chronic serves as a mirror reflecting the societal shadows, lyrically sculpting a reality that music often seeks to mask. It confronts as much as it consoles.
And therein lies its genius. That confrontation is its consolation. The innate power of its lyricism to articulate a collective experience, to voice a societal narrative, resonates with the rebellious spirit of my symphonies.
Let us delve into the revolutionary production techniques of the chronic. Ludwig, you've often pushed boundaries in your work. How do you perceive Dre's innovations?
Dr. Dre, indeed, walks a path of innovation, not unlike the way I broke free from the strictures of form and harmony. His clarity of sound, the depth, it's as if he's taken the symphonic form and transplanted it into this new era. Let Me Ride, the dynamics, the layering, it's Beethovenian in its complexity, masked as simplicity.
Complexity masked as simplicity? Ludicrous. The Baroque complexity in my fugues and counterpoints involves weaving multiple melodies into a coherent whole, which I dare say requires a touch more craftsmanship than sampling pre-existing pieces.
Johann, you misapprehend the artistry in Dre's sampling. It is not mere replication, It's transformation, reconceptualization. He breathes new life into old bones. It's a resurrection, not a theft.
But where is the emotion? I listen, and yes, the engineering is pristine, but it feels cold, detached. The melancholy in a single nocturne of mine carries more depth than I perceive in these beats.
But Frédéric, consider how these beats, as you call them, reach deep into the soul of a generation. They narrate the contemporary human condition, echoing the sociopolitical discourse. The innovation lies not just in the sound, but in its relevance, its immediacy.
Relevance? Beethoven, you honor this Dr. Dre, yet I wonder, would such a sound not fade into the background without the lyrical narrative? It is the opera of the streets, yes, but is the production alone truly pioneering without its verbal counterpart?
Ha! You misunderstand, Giuseppe. The production sets the stage. It frames the narrative. Without Dre's innovative approach, the impact, the raw emotion of the storytelling would be lost. The orchestration, if you will, amplifies the drama.
Let's not mistake technical brilliance for emotional depth. Yes, Dre manipulates sound in fascinating ways, but let us not forget the role of melody. It is the melody that lingers in the heart, long after the chords fade.
A valid point, Wolfgang. And yet, Dre's melding of melody with rhythm and texture creates a canvas that is more than just a backdrop for verses. It is a character unto itself in the unfolding drama. His minimalism in Nothing But a G-Thang, it's the very essence of restraint, every note purposeful, every silence measured.
Purposeful? Perhaps. But innovation? I remain unconvinced. True innovation involves creating something unprecedented. Sampling exists on the foundation laid by others.
Yet, is not all creation a dialogue with the past? Dr. Dre's choices in production technique, his use of sampling, it's a conversation spanning decades, genres. He bridges divides. Johann, much like your well-tempered clavier, bridged the tonalities.
Still, one must ask, does this conversation elevate the discourse or merely repurpose it? Innovation should elevate.
Repurpose or elevate, it challenges norms and sparks debate, much like our discussion today. Dr. Dre's The Chronic has unquestionably left an indelible mark on the fabric of music, standing as a testament to its era's innovation in sound engineering and production technique. We now turn to the fascinating interplay between funk, soul, and hip-hop within The Chronic. Wolfgang, your thoughts on this fusion?
Dre's magic lies in his alchemic mixture of sounds, a true feast for the senses. In Fuck With Dre Day, for example, the funk is palpable, reminiscent of my own symphony's playful dialogues between instruments. But pray tell, must we bind ourselves to genres when music itself is boundless?
Boundless, you say? Yet each style brings its own discipline. The Chronic's charm, to me, seems to mirror the way I approached the temperament in my well-tempered clavier, seeking balance. Dre, albeit in a vastly different context, achieves a kind of universal harmony, blending genres that were once distinct.
Balance? Music is not about balance. It's about emotion, about passion. The funk and soul in Dre's work are the colors he uses to paint on the canvas of hip-hop. Where you see balance, I see bold strokes of genius.
Silence, both of you. You speak of passion, Wolfgang, and balance, Johann, yet overlook the raw power and innovation in Dr. Dre's work. He has harnessed these genres not for mere balance or color, but as a vehicle for expression and revolution in sound. His work embodies the same spirit I poured into my Ninth Symphony, a defiance, an evolution.
But let us not forget the socio-political implications of Dre's choice of genres. Funk and soul are deeply rooted in African-American culture, bearing the weight of struggle and resistance. The Chronic employs these genres not just for their musicality, but as a nod to cultural identity and commentary. Cultural identity, yes, but there's a delicacy in the interweaving of these genres, akin to the interplay of light and shadow in my nocturnes. Dre's work is not merely defiance. It's a nuanced conversation between musical traditions.
Indeed, each genre contributes its own voice to the album's narrative. But Ludwig, you compare it to your Ninth Symphony. Is it fair to equate these vastly different works?
Absolutely. Both break barriers, challenging the norms of their times. Genius recognizes no bounds of genre or era. It speaks to the future, reshaping music's very essence.
Yet, let us not forget the roots from which this music springs. Innovation should not discard the past, but build upon it. Dre's acknowledgement of funk and soul's history within the Chronic pays homage to those roots while charting new territory.
Building upon the past, yes, but leaping joyously into the future. Dre dances between genres as I did between melodies. The result? A burst of creativity, an explosion of sound that defies any single categorization.
And through this sound, this fusion, Dre conveys a narrative much like the operas I composed. It's a sonic exploration of society, culture, and identity, a reflection of the human condition.
A reflection, indeed. The Chronic utilizes funk and soul not just as genres, but as vessels for a deeper exploration of sound and meaning. Our debate shows the complexity of Dre's work, a tapestry of the past, present, and future. Let us now delve into the socio-political dimensions of the Chronic. Dr. Dre's work does not shy away from confronting themes of racism, policing, and the struggles endemic to urban living. It might be surprising to draw parallels between this album and the operas and symphonies of yesteryears, but the essence of protest and existential questioning is deeply embedded in music history. Giuseppe, your operas have often been infused with the spirit of nationalism and struggle. How do you interpret Dre's explicit commentary in this context?
The raw vehemence with which the Chronic tackles its socio-political subjects reminds me greatly of my own passion for Italy's unification. The power of music to not only reflect but also influence societal change cannot be overstated. In The Day the Niggas Took Over, there's a palpable sense of urgency and protest that resonates with me deeply. Much like in my Nabucco, where the chorus of the Hebrew slaves is a cry for freedom, Dre uses his music as a clarion call against oppression. This isn't mere entertainment, it's a weapon in the cultural battleground.
Bah, Giuseppe, your comparison skims only the surface. What Dre accomplishes goes beyond mere protest. It's about crafting a sound that embodies the struggle, the resilience of the human spirit in face of adversity. I, too, have imbued my compositions with a sense of defiance, a rejection of fate's tyranny. Consider the sheer force of my Fifth Symphony's motif, its rhythm, da-da-da-da, akin to fate knocking at the door. Dre's beats, his rhythms on the tracks are no less impactful, conveying urgency and unrest. However, isn't it the mode of expression, the raw, unfiltered lyrics that truly set the Chronic apart? The vivid storytelling drenched in societal commentary, therein lies its revolutionary spirit.
Oh, Ludwig, always so dramatic. Yet I cannot entirely disagree. Dre cleverly intertwines the specifics of African American experience with a universal appeal for freedom and justice. But, gentlemen, aren't we overlooking the ingenious melding of form and function? The music itself, with its rich layers, its bold interplay of samples and beats, creates a sonic landscape that mirrors the complexity of societal structures. Its genius lies not just in the lyrics or the message cut, but in how the entire auditory experience embodies the essence of struggle and protest.
I find myself surprisingly in agreement with Wolfgang. The structural elements of the Chronic do indeed mirror the complexity of the topics it discusses. However, one cannot ignore the moral quandary posed by the explicit nature of its content. In my time, music sought to elevate, to draw one's gaze upwards towards the divine. Yet I must acknowledge the visceral impact of Dre's work. His unapologetic embrace of reality, in all its grit and grime, challenges us to confront the truths we'd rather not face.
Gentlemen, certainly the emotional depth and societal critique of Dr. Dre's work is undeniable. Yet is there not a danger in glorifying such a raw and uncensored portrayal of violence and struggle? My compositions, while deeply personal and reflective of my own turmoil, sought to explore the subtleties of human emotion, the unspoken longings of the soul, rather than incite or provoke. The melancholic introspection in Let Me Ride, however, touches a chord within me, suggesting that even in the bluntest of messages, there is room for emotional complexity and introspection.
A spirited discussion, indeed. It is clear that the Chronic, through its confrontational stance on socio-political issues, its bold soundscape, and its narrative depth, shares more in common with the works of historical compositional masters than one might initially presume. Each track, much like the movements of a symphony or scenes in an opera, contributes to a larger conversation, a conversation that transcends time and genre, united by the enduring power of music to challenge, reflect, and inspire. Let us turn our attention to Dr. Dre's unique approach to collaboration, an aspect of the chronic that cannot be overlooked. His ability to amalgamate diverse talents, voices, and styles into a cohesive musical statement is unparalleled. What are your thoughts on this collaborative effort in the realm of artistic creation?
In the intimate dialogues of my nocturnes, each note, each phrase converses with the silence around it. In a similar vein, Dre's collaborative spirit breathes life into D's newts, where artists are not merely featured but are intrinsic to the narrative thread of the song. This symphony of voices lends a texture, a richness that solitary creation often lacks. It's this orchestration of diverse talents that I find particularly admirable.
Collaboration, you say? A fugue involves multiple voices, each pursuing its own path, yet contributing to a greater whole. However, the key to a successful fugue is control, discipline. My concern with the chronic is whether these collaborative efforts maintain the structural integrity necessary in composition, or if they devolve into cacophony.
Ha! Johann, your obsession with order blinds you to the genius of Dre's method. Be it a symphony or D's nuts, the magic lies in harnessing the chaos, in directing the disparate forces towards a common aim. This album's collaborative nature is not its weakness, but its strength. Dre acts as the conductor, guiding each artist to contribute to a masterpiece, much like I have directed orchestras to breathe life into my compositions.
Gentlemen, let's not forget the element of joy in collaboration. The playful interplay between artists in the chronic mirrors the opera buffa, where characters and motifs engage in a delightful dance. Dre has mastered the art of blending not just sounds but hearts and minds. It's this spirited communion that elevates the album.
While the collaborative effort is commendable, I question the substance it brings forth. Opera, my field, thrives on collaboration, yet it demands a coherence, a unity of purpose that transcends individual prowess. Does the chronic achieve this, or does it lose itself in the egos of its collaborators?
Each of you presents valid observations. Collaboration, in any medium, is a double-edged sword. Yet what we cannot deny is Dr. Dre's role as a maestro, orchestrating a symphony of voices and sounds to present a narrative that is as complex as it is captivating. Whether it achieves the structural purity Johann yearns for, or the controlled chaos Ludwig admires, it forces us to reconsider the boundaries of collaborative artistry in music. We now venture into the heart of the chronic's influence on West Coast hip-hop and its emblematic sound. Let's examine how this regional sound evokes a cultural identity. Giuseppe, your insights?
The chronic indeed encapsulates the essence of a region, much like the operas of my time that carried the spirit of Italy. Dr. Dre, through his album, conducted a symphony of urban life, each track a movement that resonates with the vibrato of the West Coast. It's the verismo of hip-hop, raw and real.
But let us not adorn this with too much romanticism. The importance of regional identity in music predates even my symphonies, which stirred the soul of Europe. Dre's work, while impactful, follows a lineage of expressing struggle and triumph through a local lens. His innovation lies not in the creation of this idea, but in its execution within the paradigm of hip-hop.
Indeed, the chronic serves as a fugue of sorts, with each voice, the samples, the lyrics, the beats, entering and exiting in such a manner that presents the complexity of West Coast life. However, one must question, does this regional sound not risk becoming insular, speaking only to those within its immediate context?
Johann, but that's precisely the genius of it. The playful interplay between the regional and the universal in the chronic extends its reach beyond the immediate. It dances, much like my operas, between the specific and the general, allowing those far removed from the West Coast to taste its unique cultural flavors.
Yet it is the melancholy, the undercurrent of suffering and resilience that speaks to me. This album, much like my nocturnes, transcends its regional bounds through the universality of its emotional landscape. The pain, the joy, the struggle, it's a Chopinesque portrayal of the human condition, set against the backdrop of the West Coast.
Fascinating perspectives. We see how the chronic mirrors the techniques and intentions of classical compositions, using the specific to touch on the universal, and in doing so, defining a regional sound that resonates widely. Would you agree that this blend of the local and the universal in Dr. Dre's work potentiates the evolution of sound?
Only to an extent. Evolution requires breaking free from traditional confines, and while the Chronic indeed pushed boundaries, its true revolutionary power lies in its production and social commentary. The regional sound is but a vessel for greater innovation.
Ah, but Ludwig, you underestimate the power of regional identity in fostering a sense of belonging and pride that can indeed stir revolutions, both in music and in society. The Chronic did not merely push boundaries, it set new ones.
A vessel, yes, but also a constraint. The dialogues within the album, much like the polyphonic debates of a well-crafted fugue, explore these constraints, offering a multiplicity of perspectives that, in itself, drives evolution.
Excuse my interjection, but isn't the true mark of innovation the ability to transcend these very constraints? Dr. Dre's regional sound has become a universal language, much like my melodies have. The specificities of the West Coast become every man's story through the album's genius.
And so, the Chronic stands as both a mirror and a map, reflecting societal truths while charting new musical territories. Through its exploration of regional sound, Dr. Dre's work resonates with the dialectics of evolution and universality, themes we see deeply embedded in the compositions of those around this table. Gentlemen, let us delve into the matter of the Chronic as a concept album and its duality of cohesion versus individual track impact. Wolfgang, you spoke highly of its overall narrative cohesion. Start us off.
With pleasure, Igor. The Chronic indeed stands as a cornered gem, much like a grand opera where each aria and recitative advances the plot while shining on its own. Dr. Dre, akin to a skilled maestro, commands a broad yet unified thematic landscape. Every track, whilst singular in its lyrical and musical expression, threads into an overarching narrative with the dexterity of a well-composed symphony. It's akin to my own The Magic Flute, where each character's aria—
Hogwash. Wolfgang, your comparison is rose-tinted at best. Dr. Dre's work, while meritorious for its bold production, lacks the subtlety and depth of the operatic form. Cohesion, perhaps, but where is the profound exploration of human condition found in Beethoven's symphonies? Each movement in my Ninth Symphony explores a deeper layer of humanity, transcending mere narrative cohesion. The Chronic merely scratches the surface.
Now, Ludwig, perhaps you undervalue the importance of directness in conveying a message. Dr. Dre does not meander through existential queries, but rather presents the stark realities of urban life with an unvarnished clarity. Like my fugues, each piece stands firm on its own merit, while also serving a larger architectural purpose. The Chronic's use of recurring motifs and thematic material across its tracks orchestrates a larger narr.
Ah, Johann, but does it truly elevate? Being a concept album, it should liken to a grand opera, where each note bears weight, each silence speaks volumes. Dr. Dre might unify themes across the Chronic, but does he accomplish this with the emotional depth and dramatic weight of, say, La Traviata? Each of my operas carries the listener through an odyssey of the soul. Does Dr. Dre's work pierce the heart or merely entertain the ears? Gentlemen, you seem to dismiss the subtleties hidden within the apparent simplicity of the Chronic. Like my nocturnes, each track embroiders a portion of the emotional landscape, complete unto itself, yet more poignant as part of the whole. Its cohesion and impact are not mutually exclusive, but rather mutually enhancing. The introspective listener discerns a continuous narrative of struggle, hope, and defiance, akin to—
Interrupting again. But that's precisely where it falters, Frédéric. Your nocturnes bifurcate the emotional from the narrative. The Chronic, while it professes a narrative cohesion, leans heavily on the impact of individual tracks, losing the subtlety of the overarching story. Yes, it entertains, it moves, but does it truly bind the soul to its narrative?
Enough. Your points, though varied, highlight the complexity of evaluating the Chronic within the pantheon of concept albums. It seems clear that, like all art, its worth and impact are in the eye, or perhaps the ear, of the beholder. Its approach to cohesion versus individual track impact ignites a debate not easily settled, mirroring the diversity of music itself. Let us now turn our attention to the symbiosis of music and the visual arts, as evidenced in the Chronic's music videos. Frédéric, your opening thoughts on this fusion?
Certainly, Igor. The visual components of the Chronic do more than merely accompany the music. They elevate it, rendering the experience more tactile. Much like my nocturnes explore the depth of the night's melancholy, the music videos for Nuthin But a G-Thang and Let Me Ride delve deeply into the essence of Dr. Dre's sonic world, providing a window into the soul of his work.
I must interject, Frédéric. While the marriage of image and sound is nothing new, opera has long been doing it, the directness with which the Chronics videos communicate is indeed noteworthy. However, one cannot ignore the simplicity and sometimes the crudeness of these visual narratives. Where is the finesse, the subtlety that we, in our compositions, so painstakingly strive for?
Wolfgang, your point bears merit, but consider this. The function of these music videos is not to emulate the grand opera, but to convey a direct message, a slice of life. Their simplicity is not a flaw, but a feature. In my fugues, I sought clarity and structure, each voice independent yet harmoniously interwoven. So too do these videos create a clear narrative structure that complements the music's message.
Bah! You speak of simplicity and clarity, yet what of the art's power to transcend the mundane, to elevate the spirit? These videos, while effective in storytelling, often immerse themselves in the baser aspects of life, glorifying the vulgar. Where is the aspiration, the divine spark that should ignite the human soul towards greater deeds?
Giuseppe, you missed the point entirely. The Chronic, through both its lyrics and visual representations, captures the raw, unfiltered essence of human experience. Is not the role of art to hold a mirror to society, to reflect both its light and shadow? The vulgarity you disdain is but the reality for many, and Dre does not shy away from this. He confronts it boldly, and we must acknowledge the courage it takes to do so.
Gentlemen, let us not stray too far from the heart of the matter. The integration of music and visual storytelling in the Chronic opens new avenues for composers and artists to explore. This is not solely about whether the content appeals to our individual tastes, but about the evolution of musical expression in the modern age.
True, Igor. And it's this evolution that intrigues me. Despite my reservations, the dynamism of combining sound and video cannot be denied. It creates an immediate, immersive experience that speaks directly to the viewer-listener. Perhaps there is something in this approach that we, with our focus on the purely auditory, have overlooked.
And yet, in our debates, we find ourselves at the cusp of a revelation. Just as my compositions sought to evoke visual scenes through sound, the Chronic's marriage of music and video literalizes this endeavor. Therein lies a new form of art, one that speaks to both the eye and the ear with equal potency.
Indeed, Frédéric, this confluence of senses marks a significant moment in the trajectory of art. The Chronic not only showcases the potential of music videos as a medium, but also challenges us to reconsider the boundaries of our own creative endeavors. Let us take this understanding forward, embracing the fusion of visual and auditory elements as a potent tool for artistic expression. Let us delve into the legacy and influence of the Chronic. How has it shaped the future of music? Ludwig, your thoughts?
The audacity Dr. Dre showed in blending genres, layering sounds, it speaks to me of my own innovations. The symphony was never the same after my third, much like hip-hop post the Chronic. It's a revolution.
Hold, Ludwig. While transformation is key, it's the structuring, the base that holds. Much like my fugues, the Chronic crafted a blueprint for others to follow, expanding upon rather than merely transforming.
Both of you speak truths, yet the charm lies in the detail. Dre's sampling, a playful art akin to variations on a theme. Each new artist using his method stands on the shoulders of a giant, reaching for new heights, but ever indebted to the past.
But we fail to address the context. The Chronic transcended music. It voiced a cultural, almost operatic narrative of struggle and resilience. Its influence is not merely musical, but deeply societal. And yet, amidst this clamor, let us not forget the intimate, the personal. Just as my nocturnes evoke deep emotion within constraint, Dre's production invited listeners into a vivid personal soundscape. This emotional depth forms part of its enduring legacy.
Insightful points. But how do we reconcile this with the collaborative aspect of the album?
Collaboration is the lifeblood of creation. I thrived on the chemistry between collaborators. Dre, much like a conductor, unified diverse talents to conceive a masterpiece greater than its parts.
Passion drives creation, yet it is through disciplined individualism and not mere collaboration that true innovation arises. Dr. Dre's genius lies in steering these collaborations towards his singular vision.
Order and method are necessary for harmony. In the Chronic, Dre balanced voices as I would balance voices in a cantata. The genius lies in the amalgamation, the control over chaos.
You speak of order, Johann, yet it is the fiery spirit of unity and defiance against societal ills that imbued the Chronic with its power. The collective voice amplifies the message, much as in my operas where chorus and soloists unite to evoke grand narratives. A symphony of voices indeed, but within each note of the Chronic there lies an intricacy, a delicacy that speaks to the listener intimately, creating a mosaic of sound that is as much about the individual as it is about the collective.
Each perspective offers a window into the complex fabric of the Chronic's legacy. Its innovation, societal impact, and emotional depth have indelibly marked the landscape of music. As artists, we recognize the intricate dance between innovation and tradition, individuality and collaboration. Through Dr. Dre's lens, we see these dualities not as opposing forces, but as complementary, each enhancing the other to create something truly groundbreaking. As we approach the conclusion of our discussion on The Chronic by Dr. Dre, let's deliberate its legacy and what it propounds for the future of music. Johann, your insights, please.
This album, The Chronic, it reminds me of the clavier in its complexity and depth. Just as the well-tempered clavier demonstrates the universality of the keyboard, Dr. Dre's work showcases the universality of hip-hop. It's not merely music, it's a complex study in rhythm, harmony, and counterpoint. Yet his reliance on sampling, though innovative, stirs in me a lament. Originality must birth from the soul, not borrowed echoes of the past.
Ah, Johann, but you missed the essence. Music evolves. It's about emotion, resilience, and yes, revolution. This album, it's Beethoven in its spirit. It breaks chains, challenges norms, and finds beauty in the struggle. Dre's use of technology is akin to my exploration of dynamics and texture. We must embrace innovation, not shun it.
Ludwig, passionate as ever, yet you overlook the narrative power of Dre's work. It's Verdi's operas in the streets, tales of life and survival. Its influence is undeniable, transcending boundaries, much like my own compositions. Music is a weapon, a voice for the voiceless. The Chronic gives a stage to those unheard, a trait I deeply respect and understand. Yet must we not ponder the melancholy? The melancholy of the soul, which I have often sought to express through my nocturnes and preludes, finds resonance in the Chronic. It speaks of pain, existential dread, and hope like Chopin. Dre composes not just with notes, but with emotions. But this saturation of suffering, does it not also risk glamorizing despair?
Gentlemen, you're as serious as ever. Remember, music is also about delight, pleasure, about the joy in creation. Dre's sampling its playfulness incarnate. He's like Mozart at a masquerade, mixing genres, blending histories, all with a wink. Yes, there's depth, but there's so much joy. To overlook that is to miss the essence of art.
Wolfgang, always the jester. Yet happiness is but a fleeting shadow in the face of true art's power. The Chronic is more than joy. It's a cultural shift, a beacon for change.
And yet where is the discipline, the rigor of composition? This shift, it's chaos in the guise of change.
Oh, Johann, your rigidity blinds you. Change is the lifeblood of evolution in music. Discipline, yes, but not at the cost of stifling growth.
A spirited discussion as always. It seems the Chronic stands as a monument in music, not just for its sound, but for its role as a harbinger of change, embodying the conflict between tradition and innovation, pain and joy, simplicity and complexity. Its legacy, like all true art, will be debated but never ignored. It teaches us, whether through counterpoint or sampling, opera or hip-hop, that music's power lies in its ability to echo the human condition in all its forms. Let us continue to question, to challenge, but most of all, to listen.